There is news from Tehran that they're using water cannon to disperse the protest. And apparently there's been, they're using water cannon to disperse the demonstrations that was gathering today, but there were quite large numbers. I don't know what's happened. And there is a bomb in Khomeini's tomb, which again is either whoever did it wanted to disturb the whole situation. I start with your question. I think you have to remember that Iran, 80% of the power lies outside elected bodies in Iran. And so even if we do call for anything like annulment or whatever, you have to think that the main call has to be for separation of state and religion. That must be a demand that people are saying it in the street, contrary to the gentleman in the back who obviously has no knowledge of really Iranian society. The people in the street have been calling for the state.
What did you say that I have no knowledge of Iranian society?
Okay, you are great knowledge of Iranian society, but state and religion is the separation of state and religion has been the demand and the call of ordinary people in Iran for at least 10 years, And the Islamic Republic has brought this. It's corruption, it's the fact that it forces people to live two separate lives, two lives, one in the street, one totally different in their private lives, not for the middle classes who can afford to pay their way through all the legislation of the Islamic State and regularly do so, but mainly for the working classes who are often suffering far worse from that kind of pressure put by the states and the middle classes. So the separation of state and religion is very important. 80% of power lies with the Guardian Council, the supreme leader, and after that, to a lesser extent, by the Council of Experts. All of these are mainly nominated people. You can elect people to the Council of Experts, but they are so specific to religious hierarchy that you and I wouldn't be able to stand on it, even if we were Shia. The amazing thing is that this 20% of power has created these major divisions within the Islamic State. And in a way, that is a reflection of a state in crisis. And again, people had been saying that this state is in crisis for the last at least 8 years, not just the last 4 years. And the reason that Khatami didn't get elected was precisely because the reformists didn't get elected last time, was precisely because this functioning of reformists as well as the conservatives in the Islamic State. As for the, I think two of the questions have been answered. I won't go back to them. I think for the press releases and so on, we are trying to gather everybody's, not just our own, and we are putting them on a Hopi site on a special link. So I think that would be useful. And I think my understanding is that the Arab Street is very enthused by Ahmadinejad and is fully behind him. The reasons people doubt the election has nothing to do with the press in the world or the left in Europe or the press in Europe or whatever. I said some of this earlier before some people arrived, but I do need to repeat it. First of all, it's the pattern of elections in Iran. There has been 9 presidential elections, and people know how conservative vote varies town to town, province to province, rural area to urban area, and if you like, conservative society versus modern society, both of which exist in Iran. 70% of the population are under 30. This is quite a colossal number. That 70% of the population is the generation, even in rural areas, I am told reliably, that is growing up with internet and the satellite TV, especially rural areas that are not far from the main cities. I agree there are rural areas that are too, if like, distant from the main cities to have the internet or to have satellite TV. But we're talking of a country where the state says 70% of the population is urbanized. This is a different state from Saudi Arabia. It's a different state from Iraq. It's a different tribal society has been destroyed in most of this urbanized area by 2 central states, the Shah's dictatorship and the Islamic Republic, who didn't want to continue dealing with tribal leaders. So we are dealing with a society that its formation is very different from Jordan, from Syria, from Iraq. You can't put the rules that is valid for that Arab society in terms of Islamic relations and so on, with a country where 30 years in power has done for the Islamic Republic exactly, in my opinion, what communism did for the Eastern Bloc. People see it as a joke. People don't believe in it. There is no belief amongst the working class, amongst the shantytown dwellers, even amongst the people they bust in for the demonstration of Ahmadinejad, that there is really, this is genuine Islam. They might go through a trance when Khamenei shows his injured arm or something, but I really cannot accept the idea that the majority of this population, some 60% of this 85%, voted for Ahmadinejad. But more importantly is the way they presented this. It also, which was, they decided on this percentage, and this percentage stayed up throughout the count. You can't have that kind of situation. No country has ever done that. Karoubi, who, according to this election, had 300,000 votes, and I dislike all of the reformists, Karoubi included, because some of the left have illusions about him, let me make it clear. Karoubi got 4 million votes when he stood as an MP, and now they're saying as a president he only got 300,000. I mean, nobody in Iran believes these figures. Let me put it this way. Rezai, who has the backing of a large chunk of the Revolutionary Guards, the Pastaran, who is the former commander of the Pastaran, and they say there is 15,000 Pastaran, and their relatives, and 150,000 Pastarans and their relatives and so on, got something like 600,000 votes. It's just unbelievable in every level. It's just not possible. It also is true that all polls showed that up to 25% of the population, of those who did vote at the end, were persuaded in the last week or so. Now, I cannot imagine that that percentage was persuaded to vote for Ahmadinejad, because the momentum in those last 10 days was entirely of the other camp. And in fact, many of those who did participate had no illusions and disliked the reformists as much as I do, and thought they were corrupt. However, they voted as a Stop Ahmadinejad measure. Most people you talk to, most of the things you read are very clear. They're not concerned. They hate Mousavi. They remember, I kept telling people in Iran, do you realize Mousavi is the man who's killed more socialists than any prime minister, anyone in authority in the Islamic Republic? They couldn't care less. They said, we know all this. We just want to, it was the Stop Ahmadinejad candidate. As for Rafsanjani, as I've said before, Khamenei is keen on Rafsanjani. Rafsanjani is going nowhere. Khamenei yesterday cried about 52 years of friendship with Rafsanjani and attacked Ahmadinejad in public. The only reprimand of Ahmadinejad was, how dare you call Rafsanjani corrupt? I and everybody else agree that Rafsanjani is corrupt. However, he's not losing his power. He's not going to lose anything in his relations with Israel or anybody else. In terms of economic policies, there has been nothing in Ahmadinejad's politics of the last 4 years that has been less privatization than Mousavi. In fact, he is the IMF's candidate for the best example. Up until last year, he was the best candidate for privatization. His government became the best model for privatization in the region. I agree that many of the middle classes who are now in this campaign, and many of the left who are now in the street, are not pro-Mousavi. I think the majority of the Iranian population are not pro-Mousavi, or pro-Rafsanjani, even less pro-Rafsanjani. What they are seeing in this is two parts of a state that they don't like, at each other's throats, and they are falling into that. They are trying to make this worse. Many people in Iran hope and believe that even if last week they were saying Mousavi might be elected because the supreme leader might intervene, even if Mousavi came to power, most people's belief and hope was that he would be like Bakhtiar, the last of the Shah's prime ministers, who was, if you like, the last bearer of that old regime, really. And so no one has any problems with that. I have a lot more, but I'll say it the next round.